How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. We are back with our Spotlight series. We kept that name. Maybe it'll stick. What do you think, Leonard?
Well, it's stuck for 2 weeks, so we can only hope that makes the 3.
Yeah. What was the other one of the other ones? The Down and Dirty Bio. That's I like that. Maybe use that next time.
Yes, because since we're the Nitty Gritty, we can also be down and dirty as well.
That's right. So this week we are covering PN News. We referred to him last week on one of our episodes, and we decided we would make him a spotlight this week.
Yeah, it was in the Ranger Ross video, because apparently Ranger Ross had come up with doing a rapper gimmick while he was in WCW, and they took that gimmick and gave it to PN News. And I was actually going to make a joke about how his real name was something like Philip Nathan Newsington. But it turns out that his actual real name was where they got PN News from. Right. And I'll let you cover that now in the early years segment.
Right. Well, and PN News said that he came up with the rapper gimmick himself. Who knows? Ranger Ross said he suggested it to them first. I think that he dodged a bullet there.
But doing a rapper gimmick, I would guess that PN News is the first mainstream kind of on a national spotlight guy to do a rapper gimmick, at least I can think of.
That's the only one I can think of.
Of course, now we've had more guys do a rapper gimmick. But yeah, so who knows who made the suggestion? I don't think it really matters, just that, he was the one that wound up with it, but we'll get to that.
Well, yes, as Leonard said, we will start with his early years. His real name is Paul Neu, N-E-U. That is where the name came from. He was born July 19th, 1966 in Omaha, Nebraska. He is 6'2". His build weight was 403 pounds. He was trained by Brad Ringens, and he debuted in 1987. And he had a 2-year run in the Don Owens Portland territory as the Avalanche. He also, as I found out, wrestled in the AWA under Vern Gagne. I guess it was the same name, the Avalanche. He would then travel to Europe to compete for the Catch Wrestling Association under the name Cannonball Grizzly in 1989.
Which is a way cooler name than PN News.
I totally agree. And he would go on to, resurrect that name later on. So those are his early years. There's really not much to comment on there. But so we will go right into his spotlight years. And his spotlight years, he made his debut for WCW on the May 11th, 1991 episode of Worldwide Wrestling as PN News. It was a rapper gimmick fashioned after PM Dawn, which is a group you might have heard of. And he defeated Terry Bronson in 44 seconds in his debut. He was then given a feud with Stunning Steve Austin. And one of the controversies that he encountered during his run with WCW was that he inadvertently injured a wrestler named Dave Sheldon, who was performing under the ring name Angel of Death, which is a great name, even today, I think. But hey, so the injury came about, and PN News admitted this in a shoot interview with In Your Head Wrestling. He admitted that he came off and did his finishing move, which was a splash off the top rope, but instead of landing on the guy's torso, he landed on the guy's legs, and that sidelined Sheldon for almost an entire year to recover.
And it should be mentioned that splash off the top rope was called the Broken Record.
Right, and you know what? We will get into that finishing name because they changed it a couple times.
Oh, okay. The matches that I was watching, they used the Broken Record. And I know we're going to get into matches, but I would also say what made me laugh, the few jobber squashes I saw, soon as he hits it off the top rope, they start playing his theme music.
Okay. Well, you know what? We're going to get sidetracked right now.
Okay. I want to go into that.
That bothered the hell out of me. And I was like, is this WWE Network audio? Like, what is going on? But there were many matches where his music just started playing before he pinned the guy. Yeah. And I'm like, that would annoy me if I'm doing the job. Like, I don't know. Nobody talked about that in all the research I did. Nobody mentioned that ever. So
yeah, and it's just like the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, maybe they hit the button early. But I saw it in several other matches that I watched on YouTube.
That's so weird that you mentioned that, because I noticed it and I was like, I'm not going to mention that because maybe it's just a WWE Network audio issue. That's funny. Anyway, so after this injury issue to Dave Sheldon, Angel of Death. He was taken off television for a while. His feud with Stunning Steve Austin was dropped, and he was really used mainly in house shows, but sporadically at pay-per-views and special events like clashes. And eventually he wrestled just solely on house shows and was eventually released on March 15th, 1992. So he didn't have that long of a run. Now, so before we get to why he left, Leonard, when did you first learn of PN News? Because I have to say, this goes back to, like, I was mainly a WWF guy, and as I was listening to the 83 Weeks podcast with Eric Bischoff, he had made the comment, and I'd forgotten that WCW Saturday Night started at 6:05 Eastern.
Oh yeah.
In my area. And like he was making that in reference to the fact that on the West Coast, it would start at 3:05 on a Saturday, and nobody was watching TV on 3:05 on a Saturday on the West Coast. I wasn't watching it at 6:05 on the East Coast. I very rarely watched WCW Saturday Night because it was always on at a weird time in the day for me. But when did you first hear of PN News?
Well, I was more of a WCW than WWF guy back in the day, and I loved Saturday Night, and I usually watched Saturday Night. So I do remember PN News is one of the guys that I do remember existing at the time. Like I do have memories of him. And I know we mentioned that the name came from PN Don, but he really reminded me of the Fat Boys in his look, in his rapping style. And we've talked before about how sometimes, gimmicks are a little early, a little late. This felt a little bit late to me because the Fat Boys had their last, number one or top 40 hits, I think around 88. So this was a couple years after that he was doing that. Gangster rap hadn't come in yet.
I was going to mention that. I'm glad you mentioned gangster rap. So I did some research on this because he, even in his shoot interview, talked about, gangster rap wasn't around yet. Dr. Dre's The Chronic, which obviously busted that whole genre wide open, that came out in 1992. However, NWA and Ice-T were very much still a thing at this time. So here's what I was going to say in reference to that. He was more of like PN News was more of like a Yo MTV Raps style of gimmick. And that style of rap was fading out at the very least. Even if gangster rap wasn't as big of a thing yet, the style of rap that he was representing was definitely fading out. And it's like one of my issues with this gimmick is the fact that it just we had talked about Ranger Ross and how the Gulf War was around. I feel like this was another one of those gimmicks that was just a little bit late, late enough that like it was kind of fell between the cracks, but that, I don't know. That's kind of where I am with like music in 91 and 92 was changing in a big way. Mm-hmm. You had grunge on the rise. You had a new style of rap that was just around the corner that was, you saw flourishes of it. And here you have this 80s rapper gimmick and he's wearing these colorful outfits. And, I don't know if you want to do the yo, baby, yo, Leonard, but you can if you want.
All right. Yo, baby, yo, baby, yo, baby, yo. And you got to do this.
That's right. So.
And he was a terrible rapper as well. Yes. We'll get to his in-ring work. But he had, even if you look at a guy like John Cena had way better flow and way better rhythm. And I'm no rap expert or rap fan, but R-Truth, again, way better than PN News. In fact, I love one of the matches I watched. I won't talk about the match, but Paul Heyman's doing commentary, and he has the line, his name is PN News, and he raps all the time, but the funny thing about him is that his raps don't rhyme. And that is a better rap than anything PN News ever spit out.
I heard a clip of Jim Cornette talking about that very rhyme, and
I watched that too. But then I found the match when I was watching it where he actually said it. So
in my notes, I put that he makes John Cena and Randy Savage look like Eminem, and yes, I do own Randy Savage's rap record.
I do. I do. One of my fond memories was I was with a friend of mine and his wife, and he wanted to hear it. So we drove through a cul-de-sac area blaring the Randy Savage rap album. Like,
I'm sure that was a treat for those homeowners.
Yes.
So, I mean, his raps were not that good. To me, I feel like they barely rhymed, as you mentioned. And, I feel like anybody could have come up with them. I definitely not being a rap artist by any stretch, I feel like I could have come up with better rhymes. I could have, gotten to maybe like a John Cena type level. Like I'm that confident in my skills as a, non-rap artist. But hey, yeah, like, so the gimmick is not very good. He's not a very good rapper. No offense to him. He's still around. I don't know if he's ever going to see this, but hey. So let's talk about his outfits.
He may come after us.
His outfits. So he had the rat tail in the back.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the proper term for that these days.
Well, at the time, and I actually did have a rat tail when I was in elementary school.
Oh, wow.
For about a week. And then I told
We'll post that on our Instagram page.
Yeah, I don't think there's pictures of the rat tail that exists. It drove, for whatever reason, it just drove me nuts. Like, I knew it was back there, and I kept doing this the whole time I had it, and it was just like, just get rid of it.
And I have to comment on this. I wrote this down. Like, this didn't happen in every match, but it did happen in a couple matches. The outfits that he was wearing, to me, were not very flattering, because there were times, when, like, he'd be wrestling and, for lack of a better word, his man boobs would be, like, out of the outfit.
Yeah.
So, like,
he was very Michelin Man looking, and made him look very Michelin Man.
That's, yes. So yeah, so let's to end out his spotlight years here, we'll comment on how he left. Now, the controversy surrounding him was that he was accused of stealing from the other talent on an overseas tour. And allegedly, he was going into people's bags and stealing things. And apparently, Rick Rude caught him, and then they fought. And I heard varying accounts. Maybe Rick Rude knocked him out, maybe not. Who knows? We weren't there. But this resulted in him having a lot of heat backstage. And I know Jim Cornette commented on his podcast that he heard about it, but he wasn't sure. And Too Cold Scorpio, I watched a video with him when he commented on it, and he said that it was a cardinal sin to steal anything from the boys. So
yeah, I saw that Too Cold Scorpio video, and he doesn't say yes and he doesn't say no. He just talks about it, and as you said, it's a cardinal sin to steal from the boys. You don't do that. But he didn't say he did or he didn't.
Right.
And I did find a couple other videos. I think one was Tracy Smothers.
Yeah.
Talking about the same thing. Again, he had heard, he was around, but I didn't find anything where someone said, yeah, I directly saw him take something, or I was there at the aftermath. I saw Rick Rude hit him. Right. I didn't find anything of that. Just people saying I was around and I heard it, but nothing direct.
Right. And that's what I was going to say, is just that, we weren't there. We can't accuse one way or the other. And Rick Rude obviously has passed. I don't know how many shoot interviews he did before he passed. But in PN News, the shoot interview he did with In Your Head Wrestling, he did mention this incident. He said at the time his money was stolen as well, in addition to Terry Taylor's money, but that due to a misunderstanding, the fact that he had a secured credit card that he was able to use to pay for his room, even though he had said his money was stolen, his claim is that the blame was put on him. And, but he said he didn't do anything. And then he also mentioned the Rick Rude thing. So there was a little bit of cloudiness to his version of the events when I listened to the shoot interview. But hey, like I said, I wasn't there. But put this with the fact that he had injured another wrestler, it didn't really do him any favors. So after all that, his contract, it wasn't renewed after a year. So he was out of there. And we will move on to his post-spotlight years. So he has worked in a lot of places. His
post-spotlight years might be more significant than his actual spotlight years.
Well, yeah, just, he worked in the Catch Wrestling Association after his stint in WCW from 92 to 98. He worked in Britain for many different promotions, All-Star Wrestling as the American Avalanche, British Wrestling Federation as Raging Bull. He also, that was from 1993 to about the end of the millennium. He then also, as some people might remember, he worked for Extreme Championship Wrestling, and he debuted there on September 17th, 1999, and he used the name PN News, and he was also a member during his stint in ECW as a member of DeBaldi's, which was a heel stable of wrestlers who were What do you think, Leonard? What were they? They were
I'm going to guess they were bald.
That's right. And so yeah, his stint there didn't last very long. He had said that his flights were getting kind of expensive because he had lived in Omaha. So as opposed to driving from where he was living, they had to fly him. He
Well,
made
considering most of their shows was on the East Coast, Philadelphia, New York area.
Right.
From Omaha, that would be a very long drive. I don't know the hours from Omaha to New York City, but
and as we know about the money problems, as if anybody's watched documentaries or listened to podcasts, they had a lot of money issues. So
sure.
Paying for people's flights were probably not a common thing. He had commented in his shoot interview that there were a lot of drugs backstage. It was to quote him, he called ECW backstage area a clusterfuck. And to him, the hardcore approach was a little bit too overkill there, and he had a little bit trouble working because he was starting to have hip issues there. So, Leonard, did you watch him in ECW? Because I'll say, similar to WCW Saturday Night, ECW was always on at weird times, and I didn't really watch a lot of ECW apart from what I've seen on WWE released DVDs.
Yeah, I was in college at the time in Pittsburgh, and we did get the ECW TV, but again, it was on at like weird times. I remember it being on, like, I would get home or back to my dorm, like 2 a.m, and it was on the Fox affiliate. And I remember catching it like on a Sunday afternoon once, and just really random times. So I didn't really watch a lot of ECW. I have watched some on the network. A lot of the earlier stuff, which of course interests me, and some of the PPVs. But I have to say, honestly, I'm not familiar with any of PN News's work during his ECW years. And I didn't get that far down the rabbit hole. If there's much of that on YouTube, I was mostly watching the WCW stuff to prepare for this. So again, aware that he was in ECW briefly and being part of the Baldies. And I'd be kind of interested in knowing why Paul Heyman brought him in, considering he was there in WCW when PN News had his initial run. And of course, on commentary, he didn't seem like he liked him, but with all the heat and everything said, it just seemed odd to me that Heyman would even, want to bring him in. It's certainly not like he was bringing in a name like Terry Funk that would draw eyeballs on name value.
Well, it's funny you mentioned in his shoot interview, he did talk briefly about Paul Heyman, and that Paul Heyman was very nice to him and really helped him along with promos and kind of was able to guide him. So I guess that, solid relationship, made it a little bit easier for him to transition into ECW.
Okay, well, yeah, that's good. That's great to hear then. I was not aware of that, but if he had that relationship with Heyman, that certainly would have helped out, and good on him for one to help a struggling guy along.
Yeah, and so he ended his run with ECW in '99, and from 2000 until today, as far as I know, information on him is somewhat sketchy, but he still wrestles to this day. He goes back to the name Cannonball Grizzly. He won the European Wrestling Promotion's first ever hardcore knockout tournament. He has won the EWP World Heavyweight Championship. He defeated Bam Bam Bigelow. And he also would continue to gain titles throughout Europe. He's worked in Germany. He's worked all over the place, really. He even worked in the WAW, which is where he currently is, and he works for the Knight family, which is Paige's family. Mm-hmm. So that's where he currently is last I checked.
Yeah, and in music, there's a lot of one-hit wonders here in the States that are like big in their home country or big elsewhere, like big in Japan. And there's plenty of American wrestlers that have gone to Japan and have had bigger careers there or second careers there. So the fact that PN News, aka Cannonball Grizzly, again, much cooler name, had that in Europe, that he seems like a much bigger star in Europe, all the titles he's won, all the promotions he's worked for, the fact that he was able, and you don't hear that a lot about an American guy going to Europe and having that type of career. It's usually the American going to Japan doing that. So the fact that he was able to go to Europe and find a niche there, and that he's still wrestling there more than 30 years after his debut, is I think fantastic. You know, no matter what we might have said about the gimmick of PN News earlier, the fact that he's able to still work and work well over there is fantastic. To mention again, I'm not familiar with his European work. That's a little harder to come by here in the States to watch. I would love to see some Cannonball Grizzly stuff over the past years to see, how he's developed and how he's getting along. But the fact that he's still working, I think is really cool.
Yeah, and he's had matches with, like I said, Bam Bam Bigelow, Fit Finlay over there, and he said that the fans over there are a little bit more respectful, maybe not as critical as U.S. fans would be, and he seems to be really comfortable over there. So that pretty much wraps up his post-Spotlight years, and now we're going to get into his notable matches, and you can't really talk about his notable matches without talking about what was deemed the worst worked match of 1991, according to the Wrestling Observer, which is PN News and Bobby Eaton versus Stunning Steve Austin and Terry Taylor in a scaffold match.
Capture the flag scaffold match.
That's right. Sorry.
That's very important to mention.
That's right. And so this match is not good at all. Scaffold matches are very hard to work, in my opinion. But in this case, PN News was quite obviously, I should say, afraid of heights. He's hugging that scaffold for a lot of the time. And Leonard, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mentioned before that I met Bobby Eaton and I asked him about this match, and he just kind of hung his head and said, "Hey, man, what'd you ask me about that? I've been trying to forget it for 25 years." So even he admits that was a terrible match. And it's funny because three of those guys are considered excellent workers.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it almost seemed like they just kind of reached into like a bag of gimmicks and went scaffold match, capture the flag.
I feel like somebody should have looked at this lineup and said, okay, PN News is a power wrestler. Does it make sense for him to be in this match? No.
I've mentioned to you that at some point I would like to do like a rebooking, like pick a really terrible show and rebook it. And Great American Bash 91 would be, was it 91?
91, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Because my brain went 90 for a second. Take that show and rebook it because there's fantastic workers up and down that card, but they're in terrible matches and overbooked matches, that being one of them. And there is, if you watch that match, Bobby Eaton captures the flag and just like marches off with it and just climbs down, and then the bell rings later. And I've heard, I believe it was Brian Zane over in Wrestling with Regret, wondered if Bobby Eaton went into business for himself. He just said, "This is over. I'm just done with this. I'm just going to end this here." And I didn't get a chance to ask Bobby that because after he didn't want to talk about the match, I didn't push him to talk more about it. But yeah, that's probably the when I think of PN News, that's actually the number one match I think of.
Yeah, and you know what? That's not really the legacy you want to have.
No.
But, he's had a lot of matches with top name talent. He had a regular one-on-one match with Stunning Steve Austin for the TV title at Clash 17. He lost that in pretty quick order. He had a match, he tagged with Steve Armstrong against Ron Simmons and Tommy Rich at Starrcade. He lost that as well. He had a match with the Diamond Stud.
Yeah, I watched that one, and that one was actually Scott Hall. It was actually pretty good. I think a lot of it was, of course, Hall. Hall was one of those guys. I don't think he gets enough credit for being able to carry other people. Right. And one thing I was going to mention here is that I remember PN News being bad, but it may have been because of the scaffold match. Because going back and watching some of these matches, I thought he was a pretty agile big man. There was one squash I watched with a guy named John Fabiano. And in that match, he hits a drop kick. He does a flying clothesline, and it all looked pretty good. I was very surprised by the Fabiano match. I thought that looked really good. And another match, I want to mention that I don't know if you have on your list there, is against the One Man Gang. They had a brief feud, and that was Broken Record versus the 747 Finisher.
Right, and they had a small feud. Yep.
And one of the matches I watched, it was OMG was with Kevin Sullivan, And Sullivan brings him to ringside. And before the match, Sullivan is getting in his face, like slapping him and saying, "Hurt him bad like grandpa." And
Yeah,
keeps
I
saying,
saw that. Yeah.
hurt him bad. Like even Tony Schiavone's like, hurt him bad like grandpa. Whatever.
Yeah.
I think that should be our new catchphrase. I think that we should start saying that, this guy got hurt bad like grandpa in matches. I think we should.
Schiavone's commentary during that match was humorous.
Yes.
It was like a half, I don't really care what's happening right now.
Yeah, and even that, I mean, I thought that was a pretty decent big man versus big man match. And one man gang could always move for size. I mean, this was a little bit after his prime. But again, I thought that was a pretty good.
And that's the thing, like you were saying about one man gang. So like when I think about big men in wrestling, I kind of compare them, and obviously the timeline doesn't match up exactly to PN News, but I think of Vader and I think of Earthquake. You know, to me, those are the two most notable big men in the business in terms of being agile and how they moved. And, you know, PN News showed a lot of athleticism. As you mentioned, he did drop kicks in several of his matches. I just felt like he didn't show enough of it. You know, he had a very plodding style at times, and, you know, that wasn't super entertaining. And I felt like they didn't give enough thought to some of his moves. Like, as you said, his finisher is the broken record. It was also called the Rat Master Splash in certain matches that I saw. And it's basically just a splash off the top rope, which I feel like is just a generic, like, okay, he's a big guy, give him a splash. You know, like, it's like, can we think of something else? Like, how many of those guys had splashes? Like,
now, if he could have done like the, like we talked about the overused move video, like the, 450 Firebird flippy splash, I think that would have got over.
Yeah. That probably would, for a guy his size, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, he also had a match his last match was with DDP at Clash 18. And he actually won that match, but then he was pretty much limited to house shows after that. So, and DDP went on to become a huge star. His first match in ECW, we didn't mention it, was against Spike Dudley, and it was a squash match against Spike Dudley. I was not able to find it. What's that?
Probably in more ways than one, squash.
Well, yeah, like he said that, he had to do that basically to prove that he had no ego in ECW. So he lost to Spike Dudley. And as you were talking about, his matches in ECW are not that easy to come by. I did watch a 6-man that he was in with as a member of DeBaldi's against, he was against New Jack and Axel Rotten and Balls Mahoney. It was at November to Remember in 1999. And it was barely a match. It really was. Like, it was, I mean, I can't think of a better word to describe it than clusterfuck. I mean, New Jack came out late into the match, and, the crowd was really hot for New Jack. And that was basically it. It was like New Jack got hit with the guitar by somebody else. PN News is in there. I don't know if they ever even refer to him by name when he's in this match. He does like a flip off the top rope, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it wasn't that great. But any other notable matches you want to touch on, Leonard?
No, like I said, I watched some on YouTube today. I watched the ones that we mentioned. I watched a couple other just squashes against guys.
Right.
And again, all the squashes were a couple minutes, and I think that was probably done by design to protect them a little bit. So again, like it was an odd style, like you said, like he would hit a drop kick and then ground the guy down. He would hit a flying clothesline and then ground the guy down.
Right.
And then, of course, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, as soon as he hit the broken record or the Rat Master Splash, his music would start playing. And when I first heard that, I thought it was just like, an accident. And then it's like, why was that thing? I can't remember anybody else where it was like, oh, he hit it. It's a foregone conclusion. Hit the music, which I think you could actually use that as a gimmick, today. Like someone, he's saying, yeah, as soon as they hit that move, it's over. You might as well hit the music and, go get popcorn or whatever. So I think you could actually use that as a gimmick today for somebody.
Triple H could use that as like an authority figure. When he hits the pedigree, hit the music right away. Like, all right. So we will go into random notes here, just commenting on some random things that we found as we were researching PN News. You mentioned Tracy Smothers earlier. I watched that clip too, where Tracy Smothers had had a story about PN News apparently calling Stan Hansen an old man.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And apparently Stan found out and beat the hell out of him in the ring. Wasn't able to find that match, unfortunately, but that would have been a cool match to find. He also said, PN News commented on the whole rapping issue, and he said that his audio was often bad. The feedback was a little late, so it took him a while to get into the groove of rapping. I don't know that that was the issue, but he was trying to cover his tracks there a little bit. He talked a lot about how he didn't really hang in cliques in the locker room, which if we've heard from other people might not win you any favors. He also claims he got a call from Chief Jay Strongbow and was initially asked to go to WWE, but apparently it never found out because I don't know, maybe because his contract wasn't renewed with WCW, that fell through. Who knows how true it was. There was a clip I came across also, a Great American Bash Rap. It's just called Bash Rap 1991. And I will post a link to it in this video, and it is terrible. It is just terrible. His favorite match, Leonard, can you guess what his favorite type of match is?
His favorite type of match?
Yes, his favorite gimmick match.
Is it I'm gonna guess not a scaffold match.
No.
I will go with I'll just go with a straight up hardcore match since you said he was a hardcore champ over in Europe.
No, his favorite match is a coal miner's glove.
Oh.
He likes anything on a pole. He loved anything on pole matches, and even the guys in the shoot video commented on if he'd ever worked with Vince Russo, and he said he hadn't. So that was, I guess it wasn't meant to be, but that would have been cool. So the last random note I'm going to comment on, which is probably going to allude to who we're going to cover next in our Spotlight series.
I'm excited to find out.
His first cousin is Mike Halak, who is best known for his stint in WWF as Mantar. He's related to Mantar, which is amazing.
Yes. You before we went on the air, you asked if I knew who he was related to, and I knew I had read that, and I could not remember it. And now
I'm glad because I was worried you were going to let that slip like right away. You were going to be like, he's related to Mantar.
Mantar.
Yes.
No, I'm glad I forgot them, but no, I think Mantar should definitely be the next, because we've done 2 WCW guys in a row, so let's go back to a WWF guy.
Right.
So yes, that's what you get to look forward to, people. You got to come back and tell your friends to come watch us because you have to know about Mantar.
That's right. And so we'll wrap up. We'll both got to give our final thoughts here on PN News. In the last couple episodes we did, like Bully Busick and Ranger Ross. I commented on how I thought that there was a little bit of missed opportunities there. I have all the respect for PN News. He's made a career out of wrestling. He obviously loves it from what I've heard in his interviews, but I don't really dig him overall, I would have to say. I thought that his rapper gimmick was a little bit outdated even then. I think that his rap style needed to be the focus if he was going to get over. And you know what? I say get over. He was over to a small degree. In some of those crowds you could see, but I think that there needed to be a little bit more fine tuning and refinement there. His style, while it did show athleticism from time to time, I would say that it wasn't smooth enough for my tastes, but hey, this is just one man's opinion. As I said, he's made a career out of it for decades and good on him. So, Leonard, what do you think? Final thoughts on PN News?
Yeah, I think when you watch some of the matches, he was most over with children and women, and I think it was the fun aspect of it. He would high five them on the way to the ring. They would do the yo baby yo with him. So it's almost like a John Cena thing. That's who he appealed to. So I don't know what it was about rap gimmicks appealing to that demographic, but it seemed to do that with PN News. Again, I have to agree with you. I don't think the gimmick was great. I'm trying to think what other gimmick might have worked for him. And I really, hard to say. Like, I would love to see what he does as Cannonball Grizzly to see what that is like. Again, the gimmick was a little outdated. He didn't work the gimmick the greatest. I don't think they put a lot of investment into the gimmick, especially after he had the issues that he had.
Right.
I did hear it say, we didn't mention this when we were talking about the scaffold match, that it was kind of a rib on him to put him in that, because I guess it was known that he was scared of heights,
Right.
or that it would be terrible to put a man his size up on that scaffold, and with the 3 workers that they put him with.
Right.
So but again, memorable. I think every guy we've covered so far, I've remembered them because of the gimmick.
Right.
More than anything in the ring, it was the gimmick. And Mantar, who we're going to talk about, is definitely, you remember him because of the gimmick. But again, much like you, I haven't seen the European stuff, but I think it's amazing that he's still working today. I love to hear that he's still working today, and that he's made a living out of wrestling. And if he does, see this, I hope he can laugh along with us at some of the stuff that we laughed at, and can admit to it. And the fact that we are giving him a lot of credence and a lot of thumbs up on my end for just having the career that he's had, outside of WCW, is fantastic. So I'm glad to hear that he's still working. The other 2 guys that we've covered so far, one is dead and one's a reformed bank robber. So on that regard, PN News is number 1 in 2020 of the 3 guys that we've talked about so far.
That's true. That's true. Well, yeah, I hope he can laugh with it as well. And on that note, for Leonard, my name is Chad, and we will see you next week.